Hello, leadership hackers. Welcome back to the Leadership Hacks podcast. Today's episode is a big one. I'm joined by Matt Messias, former head teacher turned Premier League and FIFA international referee, now a coach helping leaders build real resilience and sustainable performance. We get into what resilience actually means, how you recover when you've made a mistake in public, and the simple habits that keep leaders sharp, grounded, and consistent even in tough seasons. If you're a current or aspiring leader who wants to stay strong without burning out, this one's for you. Hello and welcome, leadership hackers, to another edition of the Leadership Hacks podcast. I have the pleasure of introducing Matt Messias today, who was a head teacher, who went on to become a Premier League and international football referee. I can't wait to talk to him about that because that just blows my mind. And now he goes around as a leadership coach, teaching leaders how to become more resilient and how to achieve greater success within their organizations. Matt, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for being with us today.
Good morning. Likewise, it's a pleasure to meet you again.
And you say to meet me again. We actually bumped into each other, didn't we? Because we were both speaking at a conference. So I think it was about 6 weeks ago, delivering at a teacher conference for Diana Osagi, who's a
Yeah,
who's a force in her own right.
yeah, she's a force of nature for sure.
Matt, before we get into it, and I cannot wait to talk to you about your refereeing career, but before we get into any of that, for the listeners who don't know you, can you tell us a bit about your formative years and who you are?
Sure. I'm currently married to Katie. I've got two boys. George is 23 and Alfie's 21. So that's a job in itself, which you have to be extremely resilient for. I grew up in a big family. We didn't have much money at all. One of 8 children. And we lived in a tiny little 3-bedroom council house. There were 5 sisters crammed into one little bedroom, 2 sets of bunk beds and a little bed in the middle. Me 2 brothers. We didn't have a lot growing up, and I guess I had to learn to get by, to develop resilience and be used to not having much and be content. I think being content with the little I had was a really important lesson growing up. I wasn't particularly good at school, OB. I was a bit bored, to be honest, by the school. I didn't like the structure of you have an hour of English done to you, get up out your seat, go somewhere else, and you have an hour of maths done to you, get up out your seat. Oh my goodness, I'm thinking life's not really like that. But I loved sport, and I found something I was good at, and my strengths were all involved in sport. So much so that I scraped through my O-levels, as they were, GCSEs and A-levels, went on to PE college, taught PE for a number of years, and alongside that, my football refereeing career was taking off. So much so that in 2001, I became one of the first referees in the new professional era. There were 18 of us who went full-time professionals, so I packed in teaching and continued on my pathway to be a Premier League referee and subsequently a FIFA international referee. So I had the pleasure of traveling around the world being abused by people in many different languages. Um, and then,
I love it, and I always honestly, I'm looking forward to getting into your mindset around that because I always think, who on earth wants to become a Premier League referee? But just sticking with your formative years for a moment, then, where you said you didn't come from much, you guys didn't have much. As a child, did you know that you were poor, or was it not that explicit to you?
we became aware of it, I think, when we went to school and we
Okay,
had free school dinners.
right.
And it wasn't done very well. The process of kids who were on free school dinners at my school, my secondary school, it was like shouted at the front of the queue, all those on free school dinners come down to the front. And you
Yeah.
all went down to the front and everybody was like, whoa, there goes Messias,
Mm,
whatever. I'm thinking, wow, not a great way of dealing with things. So,
yeah.
yeah, we were aware. And then when you have friends and you go around friends' houses, you become aware that other people have more than you.
Yeah, yeah. And I know, I'm asking you to go back in time here, but how did that make you feel at the time?
Probably thinking at the time things are a little bit unfair, but as I matured, I got to understand that that's not the important things in life. It isn't the fact that how much you have or you don't have, it's how you are as a person. So in a way, I guess what could be considered a negative experience, but I certainly didn't feel in any way disadvantaged, for example. It just spurred me on to try and achieve what I wanted to do with my life, really, regardless of money.
Yeah. And Matt, I asked you that question because I've spoken to so many leaders and successful people who haven't had a silver spoon and haven't come from rich surroundings and backgrounds. And it seems to have been a driver for them to go on to achieve the success that they have achieved. I don't think that can be the case for everybody, but
No.
certainly it sounds like it was a bit of a driving force for you.
Yeah, I guess so. And some of the friends I mingled with wanted to go to university, and nobody in my family had ever gone to university before. People were thinking, "My goodness, my family, why do you want to go to university?" type thing.
Mm,
And so it was a bit groundbreaking for our family, I guess. And I really took off. I began to love learning. I didn't love learning in every other subject apart from PE and sport, I guess. I didn't really enjoy learning. But when I went to university, I absolutely switched on to learning.
right. You've mentioned sport a couple of times there.
Mm.
Again, I'm certainly with men and the men that I've been speaking to recently, sport in their formative years seems to have played some kind of anchor role. It seems to be something that they gained great pleasure from, and they could show their worth, I guess. And that's what kept them within the educational system at that time. Why is that?
Weirdly, you've just described me in a nutshell. I'd found something in sport that I was good at. And I guess I got self esteem from that and confidence. And when you're knocked sometimes at school because you're not academically able in many people's eyes, it's something to hang on to. And I got a lot of camaraderie from it. I love sort of being part of a team and channeling I don't know, as you're growing up and your adrenaline and your hormones flying about. It was an opportunity for me, if you like, to really channel that maybe aggression into something really, really positive. And as I say, it gave me a lot of confidence when I was good at something. I'd found something that I was really good at.
Yeah. And you talked earlier about the school system not really serving its purpose for you, for people
Mm.
like you, or for you at the time. And you just saying that, and me, recording some of the conversations I've had with others. I wonder whether, I wonder whether, from a balance perspective, there could be more sport or more recreational activities in school, in the school curriculum, that would serve pupils and students better. I don't know what your view is on that.
I think for sure. When I was at school, we were all encouraged to do sport and physical education, critical, not just sport, but you might not be into team sports, but learning how to look after your body and how your
Mm,
body moves and everything you can do around that and with your body for positive benefit was really pivotal. Unfortunately, over the last couple of decades, schools have, maybe due to external accountability measures and external accountability teams like Ofsted and have valued just the academic, and they look at what is achieved in academic subjects, and they don't look at the kids who maybe are great at sport or music or drama as
mm,
such, and don't really prioritize those. And I think it's fantastic. When I was in New Zealand, for example, a deputy head in New Zealand, I was there for 6 years. We used sport as the vehicle to get across the important messages
yeah,
of winning and losing with dignity, cooperation, teamwork, respecting your opponents, discipline, all of those things. I think sport can be a great vehicle to develop young people in career readiness skills, which I think is absolutely crucial and is often missing in schools, those career readiness skills.
yeah. And I love the way you articulate those points there, because it's my absolute belief. And I think as a parent, and you said you've got two kids. I've got a 16-year-old, two boys. I've got a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. Whilst I don't force them to do any particular sport, the one thing that they have to do is extracurricular activities of some shape or form, because I believe in the benefits that you have just described when it comes to being, I say, societal ready. It's not just for work, and it's not just for education, but I think if you are going to be a rounded individual who's capable of giving positively to the community, I think sport has, and recreation plays a vital part in giving you that full.
Percent couldn't agree more. It's taught me so much. And I think younger people who take part in sport, it helps develop their character. And character's really important. I think, when students get their GCSEs and A-levels, what does it say about their character?
Mm,
Do we know anything about the character? Not
mm,
really. We know that they can sit and study and learn information and repeat that information. But does it really tell us about their character? Does it tell us about their emotional intelligence, their
yeah,
self-awareness, their self-regulation, their
yeah.
empathy for others, how they motivate themselves, their social skills? I would say it doesn't. And I think you get a lot of those lessons from partaking in extracurricular stuff, say sport, music and drama, art type stuff.
Mm, yeah. No, I completely agree with you too. Matt, was there a specific moment or season early that shaped your mindset where you had to grow up quickly, adapt, or find your feet that you can recall?
My parents divorcing was pretty pivotal. I was 15, 16. That was tough. And I had a great guy, my head of PE, Brian Winter, who only died last year. And he just encouraged me and he was a support for me going through a tough time. He encouraged me with my sport. He was a real role model for me to look up to. This was at Sir Frederick Osborne School in Welwyn Garden City. And Brian Winter was head of PE there for many years and influenced not just me, but many young people throughout his life. He was amazing. And so that was a real pivotal moment, somebody believing in me, Obi.
Yeah, and so you say that somebody believing in you. How did that make you feel? What was the pivotal change there?
I think he helped me recognize my strengths. I was told a lot about what I wasn't good at,
Mm,
and almost to the extent of I felt I needed fixing in some way. But he didn't focus on what was wrong. He focused on what was strong. And I love that, focus on what's strong, not what's wrong. If we want to develop resilience, one of the most important skills I think young people can have. So that's what he did for me in particular.
I love that saying. I've never heard that. Focus on what is strong, not what is wrong.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
that's
Really
brilliant.
important.
Yeah, brilliant takeaway. So you've been a Premier League and international referee, a head teacher, and now a resilience coach.
Mm.
What are the common threads that connect those chapters?
Well, I think that I utilize all those experiences, if you like, in the work that I do. I think back to my work when I was a referee. You've got to be resilient. You've got to bounce back. You've got 50,000 people questioning your decisions every Saturday afternoon. 27 cameras looking at every single mistake you make, and then highlighting that mistake to an audience of millions in some circumstances. And so a recognition that mistakes are part of learning, that really helped me when I became a teacher, a deputy head teacher, and so on. And I was fortunate enough to start a school from scratch with my team down in Devon, the Atrium Studio School. So that really helped me, that resilience and the willingness to understand that we make mistakes. It also developed to me, I think, across all three areas, the need to prioritize our own mental health and well-being, to lead ourselves before leading others. I'm a leader of a team. I'm a conductor of an orchestra, if you like, on the field of play. As a head teacher, when I became sort of out of teaching into leadership, I used to think that my staff were my young children, that they were my team, that I had to
Okay.
motivate and so on, and develop positive mental health characteristics so they could be at their best for other people. And so they're the major things, really, I think. Learning to lead ourselves before leading others, prioritizing our own mental health and well-being so that we can be at our best for others. It's almost a case of being selfish so we can be selfless.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. But still, when you say resilience, what
Mm.
do you actually mean? And what do most leaders misunderstand about it?
I think that resilience isn't something that you're either born with or not. It's not an individual character trait that you get at birth or you don't. It's a process of continual personal development as we learn to navigate and negotiate our way through the ups and downs of life. We all go through struggles. We all go through adversities. Life isn't always an upward trajectory. And I think resilience is learning through your strengths to cope with the challenges that you face in everyday life.
Yeah. I, I love the concept around resilience, but I equally struggle with it too. And the reason, and if I share a couple of stories
Mm.
from my own past. My mother, Joy Quadingbo, may God rest her soul, She made all of us, us four children, psychologically resilient anyway, because she absolutely battered us. You name it. She played the shame game. She beat the hell out of us. She did all sorts of things. And she was a loving mother. Our parents, mum and dad, were loving parents.
Mm.
And when I reflect back, I am thankful for the training that she gave me as a young individual, because now it takes a hell of a lot if you're going to penetrate the armor that she has suited with me with. I then look at the world as it is at the moment, and if I'm being completely open and honest with you, I think that young people are getting less resilient, are becoming less resilient because they are not going through some of the same challenging training life issues that I think my generation did. Now I know what people are thinking. Oh, I sound like that. When in my day with this and that, but that is my belief, and therefore I worry about the level of resilience of the workforce in 10, 20 years' time. I don't know if you have a view on that.
Yeah. Listening to you there, Obi, it sounded as if your mum didn't shield you from tough stuff, almost exposing you to that, punishing you when need be, helped you realize what was right and wrong, and that it sounds as if she developed in you an attitude of never giving up. And that mindset is
100%.
really critical. And bringing it round to today's young people, I think young people today are resilient. I think they are. And it's up to people who work in schools, colleges, universities, parents to help children develop the resilience they're going to need to get through life and not just survive, but thrive. It's up to everybody who has an influence on a young person to help that young person recognize the strengths they have. We don't progress and do well through weakness. We do it through our strengths. And that's why it's so important to help young people develop their strengths, to recognize who is out there that can support them when they're feeling vulnerable, when they're struggling. And wow, I'm sure everybody's aware of the huge crisis we have in young people's mental health and well-being. And so, yes, on the one hand, I think students are at potential. They can be resilient, but we're not doing a good job of helping them develop the resilience they're going to need to succeed in the life to come.
Yeah, and I think again, you have articulated the point I was trying to make much better there. And I agree with what you're saying. If we go back to your refereeing days, what was
Mm.
the biggest pressure you felt, and how did you learn to stay calm when everyone else was disagreeing with you? You talk about being in stadiums of 40,000 people, and 50% of the people are just never. Any decision you make is always going to be wrong to 50% of the people. How does that work
Um,
mentally? How do you manage that?
yeah, it's a mindset shift. Think I'm a very optimistic person. I've developed optimism as opposed to pessimism. I always try and see the good in others. I always try and see that players disagreeing with me, managers are disagreeing with me because they want to win. I get it. I understand the context. I went into refereeing eyes wide open, and I didn't need these then, although many people would argue differently. I went into the game with a real optimistic perspective and a mindset of players are going to disagree with me. I'm going to make mistakes. Refereeing football is a game of mistakes, yet it's how we respond to those mistakes mentally and emotionally, which will determine how good we become and how successful we become at refereeing. So that mindset for me was absolutely critical. So I was probably my biggest self-critic, but also my best coach. I didn't dwell too much on mistakes. I learned very quickly that when I make mistakes, when I make errors, and there were many, I would analyze them, evaluate them, write what I could learn from them for my next game that was coming up. And then I'd leave it. I wouldn't dwell on it because we can't just, I think it's really important to move forward quickly. And that's what top athletes do, I guess, and top teams. They recognize where they've gone wrong. They decide what they've got to do to put it right. They put it right and they move on.
I love everything you've said there, Matt. I've never agreed with somebody so much on a podcast as well. You're going to say something, I'm going to find something to disagree with you on. But what you have just said there, I try and teach so often to people, that it's about having that reflection moment, but getting back up on that bike and you go again, not being too egotistical, that you're not teachable, that you're not willing to learn,
Yeah.
but equally not throwing yourself under a bus and appreciating that you're a human, you're going to make mistakes. It's how you learn from it, and that's how you come back stronger. It's absolutely a fantastic story you've given there. You've said you have made plenty of mistakes,
Yeah.
and on Leadership Hacks, we love people talking about their mistakes. And I say this because social media today, too often it only glorifies the end result, and it doesn't show the process. And some of the things we've spoken about here so far is about the process. Can you tell us about a time where you've made something's gone wrong in a big moment, and how did you recover, whether that's mentally or professionally?
Yeah, well, I've got a plethora of mistakes to recount. Probably one of my biggest ones was when I refereed Portsmouth against Liverpool in the FA Cup. The first half had gone like a dream. And this was live on TV, by the way, as often my mistakes were. And my fourth official at half time had said to me, "Matt, you're refereeing so well. You've built up such trust and rapport with the players. Your fitness is great. You're up with play all the time. Your decision making is really clear and crisp. You're managing the game. You're getting that balance between being a law enforcer and a game manager. And it's often a delicate balance referees walk. And so at the start of the second half, Obi, I walked out too overconfident, arrogant. And there's a real thin line, I think, in sport between arrogance and confidence. And I think I'd overstepped that mark. And I remember a corner coming over from one side. I wasn't really focused. I wasn't concentrating. I was thinking about how great I was and what a great game I was having. There was a huge appeal for a penalty. Without even thinking about it, I pointed to the spot penalty. Then I was surrounded by 11 outfield players. The keeper decided to run about 90, 100 yards as well to inform me what he thought of my decision, along with the 25,000, 30,000 crowd who vocally told me what they thought of me. And I recognized that I'd obviously made a mistake. And I had to turn that around and thought, how on earth am I going to overcome this? I can't just say, sorry, guys, got it wrong, and the other way. And this is all before VAR, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
But don't get me started on VAR. And I thought I need to buy myself some time. So I went across to my assistant referee, and obviously there was no mics there. We weren't mic'd up, so I was talking like this, so the TV cameras wouldn't pick up on what I was saying. And I said, "I think I've stuffed up there. What did you see?" And he said, "I didn't see anything." I was like, "Oh well, thanks very much." But I knew I'd got it wrong. But I used my conversation with him, which nobody else was aware of
Of
what we
course.
were saying. I walked back 10 yards, turned round to him and said, "Thanks, Liner. Appreciate that. Thank you very much." And just blew the whistle that way.
Right.
And the players accepted it. The players accepted it. Because I guess in the commentary, in fact, which I heard afterwards, was saying at last the referee with common sense, he spoke to his assistant referee, he's changed his mind, and the players seemed to accept it. So a tough arena in which to learn, Obi, let me tell
Yeah.
you, a very tough arena. And something else which didn't go well for me in football, I really enjoyed my career. I mean, I was a referee for many, many years before I went full time as a referee, and things didn't end well. After 5 years, I guess I had what could best be described as a clash of values with my new boss. And I think when you have a clash of values in your workplace, you have three choices. You either put up with it and risk that being detrimental to your mental health and overall well-being. You move on straight away, or you try and change things from within. I tried to change things from within, was unsuccessful. And so me and the Premier League parted company. And that was a tough time initially. But I think after a couple of months, I used that disappointment as a springboard to future endeavors. And from that moment on, I realized, my life wasn't enmeshed as a Premier League international referee. I felt I had self-worth outside of that. And I think it's really important and that's the type of leadership coaching I love doing with leaders, to help them see that there are other things important in our lives, not just how we see ourselves in the workplace.
You say that, and I find that interesting because I equally work with leaders who struggle with their identity after moving on from a
Mm.
role that they have done for a period of time. Did you struggle in that initial moment of, you've become a Premier League referee, so that is a very public role, so you are recognizable, to then leave in the Premier League, and now you have to find your own way, your new thing. Did you struggle with identity at all for a period of time, or actually were you always very self-confident in your worth, value, and the next steps were very clear to you?
There was a messy period. There was what I call an ugly zone. In sports psychology, we talk about the ugly zone when you've got to learn new things to succeed. And so it's tough for the first month or two. But what I did do, I wrote down what I love doing. Where do I get my joy from? Where do I get my satisfaction from? What helps me? And I've got a faith as well, and my faith helps me. And so you draw on your strengths. You draw on what's important to you. And I knew I loved working with people. I knew that I loved coaching people. And so going back into teaching and coaching young people then led on to coaching senior leaders in schools. And eventually that took me to New Zealand. And I was lived out in New Zealand for 6 years with my wife and boys, a wonderful opportunity. And so, as I say, disappointment in one particular area of our lives doesn't have to be it for the rest of our lives. We can morph into other things. And I still had loads of things I wanted to do. I wanted to experience a new culture and live somewhere else. And I absolutely loved my time in New Zealand. When I look back, if I'd have continued on the upward trajectory in football refereeing that I was, I wouldn't have experienced so many other wonderful things that I've gone on to enjoy throughout my life.
Yeah. It reminds me of that saying, this too shall pass. And when
Yeah.
people, no matter the highs and lows that you're going through, it's going to pass. You
Mm.
can be on a high and it feels great and exhilarating, but that's going to pass. So just remain steady. And when you're at the bottom of the heap and, life is really challenging, equally, that's going to pass too. Don't
Yeah.
be too low, and just try and be as mellow as possible. Enjoy the highs. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Don't ignore them, and I'm a big advocate of celebration and celebrating milestones,
Mm.
but understand that it's a moment in time. It's going to pass, and if you can have that type of mentality and mindset, then I think that helps with your resilience, and it puts you in a position where when challenging times come, you are ready. You are more ready for them, I should say. Um,
Exactly that. Yeah, I get it. Celebrate the highs, yes, but not too much.
yeah, yeah,
Let's
yeah,
not catastrophize when we're in a bit of a valley. Let's not catastrophize too much. Let's have some perspective. Look around us. Look at other people. And I think focusing on others, developing others really helped me through tough times, giving myself away to others,
mm,
serving others before myself. That was a good lesson for me.
yeah. It's we have similar paths here, and so one of the things that I know is when I first got into this leadership development stuff is I was doing a lot of stuff for ex-work colleagues for free because I just wanted to help them, and I could see what they were struggling with. And I can't tell you the amount of hours I have spent with people where I know giving away my value and worth for free, but that's just because I want people to succeed. And I think it comes back to that moment that you had where you wrote down, well, where do you get satisfaction from? Where do you get fulfillment from? And for me, it was definitely helping others. And so if I can ever help anybody do anything, I will literally be the first in line to try and assist them.
Yeah, I think it's great for our emotional health, that, isn't it, as well?
Mm,
Because it's like doing things for other people, for those that celebrate Christmas, we talk about it's better to give than to receive. We get an emotional boost from that. And that's really, really important. Our emotions and our feelings, yeah, that drives behavior. So yeah, really important.
yeah. Just coming back to leadership then. In leadership,
Mm.
where's the line between resilience and putting up with too much? I have seen, and in fact, I can talk about myself. I have definitely been in situations where I know I have taken on too much, and I am, rather than holding my hand up and saying, I can't do all of this, the ego part of me kicks in and says, well, this is what you're paid for. You're a senior leader, you're a managing director here. You just have to deal with it. When is putting it when do we move from, or where's the line between resilience and putting up with too much?
I think it's an individual thing. Some business leaders I work with, they get immense purpose, meaning, and satisfaction from being dedicated to their work. And I see that it seems to work for them. It gives them energy. But all too often, a lot of people in businesses that I work with, they risk burnout because they're doing too much. And maybe the ego sometimes says that I've got to be able to fix things. I think the great leaders in the businesses that I work with and in schools, colleges, universities that I work with, They're able to recognize the importance of, for their own leadership, of building other people's leadership capacity, giving up things. Amazing. Now look at whether the All Blacks, Graham Henry, who was, won the Rugby World Cup twice with the All Blacks, one of the most successful sporting teams across the world, any sport. They used to have an 86% win record. Wow. Well, he said that he became a better leader the less he spoke. And what he was actually essentially saying was that he built other people up. He made leaders. He encouraged other leaders. And I think that's a wonderful way of doing things. Recognize we don't have to do things ourselves. If we do take on board absolutely everything, well, we risk burnout ourselves, and we don't want to go there. That is not a good place to be. And we're not really building up others, which is part of our job as leaders. We need to develop the leadership capacity in others.
Yeah, I agree. And I think where I have seen leaders fall short here, it's where they don't trust their leadership team or an individual within their leadership team, or they think that they can do it better and therefore they take on the additional burden. But like you say, by doing that, you are denying your team the ability to develop. And you've really got to develop those skills within those individuals. And if you can't develop them within the individuals, then I think you may have a performance management issue, and that needs to be addressed. And if that doesn't improve things, then you bring others in who are capable of doing the work that needs to be done, because it should never be the case that somebody be well, I don't like to see when leaders become burnt out as a result of poor delegation, I guess is what I'm leaning towards here.
Yeah, you mentioned trust there, Obi. For me, that's the absolute bedrock of successful leadership. It's trust, building that trust with your colleagues. So when you're away from your business place for the day, you're not always checking your mobile phone, checking your emails, calling in, checking on people. That's not the way to build a successful business or an organization. You have to have trust. And if you have trust, you can have the radical candor that Kim Scott talks about, where you can challenge each other's without fear of judgment. And you need that, don't you? And it starts with trust. You can't challenge somebody, Kim Scott says, from a position where there's no trust, because people will just get defensive. They won't listen. They won't improve their workplace culture. If you have that trust initially, you can challenge directly. And I love that. And that in turn, for me, then builds accountability, personal accountability for people at work to do the best they can. And in turn, that leads to a real focus on results, because let's be honest, all the organizations that we both work in, I'm sure, are results driven.
100%, 100%. And I think, I mean, what you're starting to lean towards now is creating those high performance teams. And there is not a high performance team out there where trust doesn't exist and where healthy challenge isn't encouraged, because that is the quickest way. I mean, we've just talked about the importance of failure and learning from those mistakes, because that improves you. I always liken it to a muscle, right? If you wanted to become stronger, then you're going to put your muscles through a heavy workload, because that's how you're going to get them to get stronger. Equally, when you're going through challenging times, and you need to go through those challenging times, you need to have those difficulties to become stronger. Now, you can do that, and you can have a culture where it's acceptable to fail, it's acceptable to make mistakes. I am not advocating for an organization to be in a position where you just make mistake after mistake after mistake, and it's acceptable. That will absolutely that you will not have a business. But what I am advocating for is, if you want to push the boundaries and if you want to stay ahead of the game, then you need to have that working culture where people can challenge you as a leader, for sure. And it's healthily challenged. They are not ridiculed. They are not made to make feel small in public arenas, even if you disagree with what they're saying, so long as it's done in a respectful way, then that is completely fine. And as a team itself, you will go on to do exceptional things. And I have worked in those teams, and I've also witnessed those teams. It's a beautiful thing when it works.
Yeah. And interesting, you listening to Obi talk about the muscle analogy, the harder you work it, the stronger it becomes. Let me tell you that that's not when muscles grow. This is me challenging you here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
love it. Yeah, yeah. During the repair time.
During the repair
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
that rest and recovery is absolutely critical. Yes, you've got to put the hard work in, as you say,
yeah.
but also it's during those periods of rest. And I think top leaders recognize that they can't do everything themselves because they need to be at their best for their team. And that rest and recovery is absolutely critical.
And we talk about the rest and recovery. What are the early warning signs of a leader running low on resilience, even if it looks like from the outside, that they're still confident and capable?
I think when they're not paying as much attention to their own personal health. So, for example, their nutritional intake might not be good. They might be relying too much on fast food, processed foods because they're busy, they're running around. They've maybe got too much in their diary and they've overstretched themselves. And then some of the signs that happen as a result of that, they start emotionally snapping with people they love, people close to them. They bear the brunt. Their mood changes, their mood shifts. And if we're not careful, if we keep ignoring the warning signs, it's a little bit like an older car that's traveling along. And I still drive a bit of an old car. And if a warning light comes on, Obi, you sort of think to yourself, oh, I'll just ignore that. It will go away. And then you carry on driving. And then other motorists are flashing their headlights at you saying, slow down, there's something wrong. But you're still ignoring the warning signs. Sooner or later, you might come to a grinding halt at the side of the road and you won't be able to get going again with external help.
Yeah.
And that's because we've ignored the warning signs. And often people who've gone through a process of ill health say, for example, I was the last to know. And I believe that self-care is critical. And if we don't take time for self-care, make time for illness. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Book it in. 6 months, 12 months, a year. It's going to happen. So recognizing the signs and symptoms is vital. And then you can actually do something about it.
And if a leader is listening to us right now,
Yeah.
and they're in their tough season, what are the three practical things you have that they can do this week to stabilize and to rebuild?
3 things. Okay. I'll give you 5.
Mhm.
There you go. They all begin with the same letter. They all begin with F. So I would say that food is really important. Food is the most powerful drug on the planet. It's medicine. If we're fueling our body with quality, nutritious, high energy giving food, natural food, 80% of the time, we're more likely to feel better and do well in whatever we do. The second one is fitness. We all recognize the importance of regular exercise. We have the knowledge, but sometimes, even as bright people in business and schools, people have the knowledge, but they don't actually adhere to that knowledge. So regular exercise, we all know what we've got to do. We've got to prioritize that time. The third one is focus, AB, the third F. And sometimes we can have great nutritional intake, we can have a great exercise regime, but sometimes our focus is, oh, I always give up on this. Our mindset is, I'm never going to be able to carry that through. We get down on ourselves. So we've got to think of our mindset and shift that mindset. The fourth one is family. I think reach out to our families. And that's something in the next few days people could do and spend more time with the ones you love. Actually realize what your purpose is. And if you say that you prioritize family, I always put family first. Well, do you really? Analyze your time over the week. Do you actually put family first? If you've got kids or you're a parent, for example, do you actually spend time doing the things that your kids want to do? Or do you try and impose what you think your kids should be doing? And the fifth one is friends. Again, people say to me, yeah, Matt, my friends are really important to me. And I say, oh, great. Talk me through your last month, how many times you saw your friends. And there's a real gap between what people say is important to them and what they actually do. And I guess my job as a leadership coach and leadership developer is to try and close that gap. So it's a bit like being on the London Underground, isn't it? And it's, you're waiting at the station, it says mind the gap between the platform edge and the train. It comes over the tannoy system, mind the gap. I think if we focus on the 5 Fs of overall well-being and we can put them into place pretty quickly, that would be really conducive to happiness, and success follows on from happiness, in my opinion.
Yeah, you've answered my second question, my supplement question actually to that, which was going to be around why do friends and family matter to somebody who's going through a tough season?
I think what people missed most during COVID was that social interaction. It's a huge part of our well-being, social interaction. I'll tell you a story, Pete. Well, it's Thursday today. Well, Wednesday night, I go down the pub my local pub every Wednesday night. And there's a group of old fellas. And when I say old, one of them's 95. There's a guy there of 90. There's a guy of 87, a guy of 81. I'm the mere youngster. And I love that because it does wonders for my self-esteem. And I asked them a couple of months back, I said, how come you old guys are still alive? And they talk really with passion about the social interaction they've kept. They used to, going back to sport here, they used to play rugby for Malton and Norton Rugby Club. And they have a great connection with the club. They still go and watch them. Some of them watch the home and away. They have a social there. They have a drink. They relax. Every Wednesday, they go down the pub. And I've joined them for the last 4 or 5 years. And we put the world to rights on a Wednesday. That social interaction, challenging each other, laughing is so important. And so I don't think we can underestimate the importance of social interaction in our overall well-being.
Yeah, I think social interaction, we're social animals. Let's face it, we are human beings. Human beings are social animals, and we need that social element. I love your story there because what's also happening is something that I think is so important. I think not enough people do, which is interacting with that generation above you. You
Yeah.
can gain so much knowledge. I mean, you can have a laugh and you can put the world to rights and so on and so forth. But most things historically have happened time and time again. They repeat themselves, just in different guises with different masks on. And through having the conversations that you're having, every now and again, I think you must do, because I certainly do anyway. I have an aha moment when I hear a story from an elder and think, oh, geez, that's exactly the same as, and then whatever the situation is. And I'd never considered it in that way. And you walk away with thoughts, and you try and figure something out that you thought, well, I never even thought about that. I love speaking to the elder generation for sure.
It's my highlight of my week, Wednesday nights down the pub. We just have a couple of drinks. I walk one of the guys home and he's dodgering away, and it's wonderful. I absolutely love it. And I think there are a lot of schools actually who are really good at this, particularly primary schools, the outward facing, community focused schools where the kids go in and work in old people's homes, for example.
Yeah.
Mix with older people, they talk and the learning is reciprocal. It's phenomenal. And a lot of schools do that. And I think, how cool is that for character building? Learning, getting young people to learn from older people, have that open to learning mindset. Whoever you meet, what can I learn from this person? I
Yeah.
think that's a great thing for young people to get involved in.
I agree. You mentioned sometimes you have to be selfish earlier on with your time and who you spend it with. What does healthy selfishness look like for leaders, or is that your 5 Fs that you've just spoken about?
Yeah, I think essentially it is the 5 Fs. That's how we do that. But it's unique to everybody, isn't it? We need to find, for example, when it comes to exercise, I see some people, the start of the year, January the 1st, New Year's resolution, I'm going to get fit, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to this, and people go at it like a Trojan for the first 3 or 4 weeks, and they don't see a big difference. And they think, oh, it's not for me, this exercise thing or this healthy food stuff, it's not for me. We don't give things time. We look at things and think, oh, crikey, I want to lose weight. Well, that's bigger than Texas, and that's pretty big. And what we need to do is to break things down, as we know, into small, achievable goals. If you or I was to go for a jog tonight after we finish our work, well, we wouldn't see much difference in a day, a week. But if we did that 3 times a week over a period of a year, we'd see huge difference. And conversely, Obi, if we if we decide to eat a full-size family pizza tonight, maybe we wouldn't be nice to be around immediately. But if we did that 3 times a week, well, we're going to see a negative difference. And so that selfishness I talk about is making sure we do focus on those 5 Fs. And if we do that, we're more likely to be in a positive mindset, be in positive mental health, to make a difference to those that we influence in our workplace and our families.
Yeah. And I think a good analogy to what you've just described there is, well, in my view, is pensions, because I talk to people about this from time to time. Pensions in their health. When it comes to your pension, you tend to be happy to put a little bit away every single day, every single month, for 30 to 40 years, for something you can't see today when you're 30 years old. But when you're 65, so in 35 years' time, you're going to require that. Health works in exactly the same way. I really do. I genuinely believe it is. So doing that little bit of exercise, whether it can be as little as a 20-minute walk every single day, is going to benefit you 20-fold when you're 65. That's when you really need it, when you want to be healthy, because the older you get, our bodies start to give up on us, and we want them to be as strong and as robust in that season. And so I think health is immensely important. And I hope that resonates with somebody. I hope somebody understands that analogy there.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's those small steps lead to big results, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's the key.
absolutely. Absolutely. We spoke about previously off camera, the last time we spoke about neurodiversity in schools and some of the challenges that schools are having and some of the kids that are being failed as a result of it. What do you think leaders in these workspaces can learn from conversations about inclusion and resilience?
Interestingly, the phrase you used there, Obi, how schools have failed young people. Yeah, I endorse that. I see that a lot. Schools fail young people. The traditional way of schooling is not it for every kid. They all learn differently. And I think the best thing educators can do is to find out what a young person is interested in, what they love doing, help them find their love. And then when they've found it, give 100% energy and attention into helping that young person flourish in their the thing they love. And that's really important. Unfortunately, a lot of the school systems uh, that we've experienced, and is the same in many countries across the world, they they don't do that. They try and push everybody through one route. And what happens to the child that is excelling in areas outside of school, but nobody in school knows that the success they're having in other areas because they're just focused on an academic pathway. And what really frustrates me, Obi, is at the end of the summer term, end of the exam season, and we think of the children right now preparing for exams. I can guarantee, and I have this discussion and challenge and argument with head teachers all the time. I say to them, what am I going to see when you get your exam results on your website? I bet you any money I just see pictures of kids. All these kids have got A stars and grade
Yeah.
nines in the GCSEs and all this. I said, what about the young people that were maybe on a grade two when they started the school and they've made tremendous progress to get to a grade four? Am I going to see photographs of them on your website? Or are you telling them by just showing that success is all about A stars that you can't achieve success in other ways? And so that really frustrates me. And I will continually have that discussion and debate with head teachers. They need to show kids they can be successful in a multitude of different areas.
And that success looks different to different individuals too. I think that's exactly what you're saying. It reminds me of the video of the sports coach, Mr. Dick, who is coaching a young girl who runs 20 seconds, comes last in that race, and she talks about coming last, and he's like, "No, you ran that in 20 seconds. Your challenge now is, can you run your next race faster than 20 seconds?" She goes and does that. Has she been successful? Yes, she has. She still finished eighth, but has she been successful? Yes, she has. And it's the system repetitively telling certain individuals, certain children, that they have failed, they are not good, they're not up to scratch, that I think has a lasting damaging effect on their mental capacity and beliefs and self-beliefs about themselves.
I think you're right again. It's that deficit paradigm. We're telling so many young people what they're not good at, what they're lacking. We're coming from that. And if children get told that a lot, well, it's that self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? They begin to believe that they're not good enough. They're not the model of success that society values. And I think there's a lot of fault here with not necessarily school leaders, although real courageous school leaders, it's going to take a lot of courageous school leaders and parents and carers to say, you know what, we're not satisfied with the system. We need to do better by our kids because they're all different. I think a lot of the fault lies with the accountability measures. Schools are judged on their percentage pass rates in GCSE and A-level, for example. We judge a school, and therefore it's no surprise that lots of head teachers try and get the best grades they can because we have league tables that show that this school are much better than that school, aren't they? Because they got so many passes.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
Yeah.
What about the career readiness skills? what about that? What about the creativity, which the World Economic Forum always say every year, by the way, is the most important skill that young people will need to be successful in their future lives? What about, how do we measure resilience? How do we measure emotional intelligence in young people? They're the things that are going to help you be happy and successful in the future, not a bit of paper that has whatever grade you've got on it. That's not going to. Lots of employers I know now just rip that up. We say we're not interested in that.
Yeah.
We're interested in their character education. That's what we should be focusing on.
Yeah, indeed. We learn over time, as we become more mature and more wise, that intellect is important, but there are so many characteristics that are far more important than intellect. And I would take and I'm talking in generic terms, a bang average person from an IQ perspective who is teachable, has desire, and wants to achieve over somebody who has all the intellect in the world, highest IQ in the world, but has not got the social skills to have conversations, to get on with colleagues, and to integrate into teams and so on and so forth. I've seen it too many times, and I know what definitely works in the workplace, whatever that workplace may look like.
I agree. I mean, Daniel Goleman summed it up. He said, emotional intelligence is twice as important as academic intelligence in determining workplace success.
Yeah, yeah. So
I think it's even more than that. You can have somebody who's got 25 letters after their name,
yeah.
and yet, as you say, they can't chat with people over a cup of coffee.
I've seen it. I've seen it, Matt. I've literally seen it in workplaces. And yeah, look, we are not going to fix the educational system in an hour's podcast
Oh, we
conversation.
fixed it down the pub on a Wednesday.
But I think what is important to me, and this is why I tend to touch on this subject on many of my podcasts, is because I think we absolutely have to have the conversation. We have to keep on trying to push and hope that it falls on ears of people who can make a difference at government level. Yes, we have a fantastic educational system in the UK. That goes without say. It could be so much better. It could serve so much more of the child population if we could tweak it and in a way that served more of the child population than it does at the moment. And I think that's why it's so dear to our hearts as we talk about it here.
Yeah. Let's prioritize children's mental health and well-being in schools.
Yeah,
Let's do that. That's the baseline.
yeah.
Let's work on that first. And the World Health Organization, they say that, mentally healthy children are more likely to succeed than those that are not. Let's start from that as a baseline. Wouldn't that be revolutionary?
Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I have one final question. It would be remiss of me to have a resilience coach here and not to ask you this question. If you could leave every current or aspiring leader with one resilience principle to carry out over the next 12 months, what would it be and how should they apply it on a bad day?
Oof, one thing. Focus on leading ourselves before leading others. That is the most important thing for me. The one thing, because underneath that, if you're looking after your well-being, your food intake, your fitness, how you engage in your community, how you do things for others, if we focus on ourselves first of all, get our house in order, then we're more likely to be happy, to be successful, and be a great role model for others.
So well said. I think again, I've spoken before about the most important person within any family unit is always the parents, and the parents need to be healthy. There's a reason why when on an aeroplane they say put your mask on first before helping the child, because without you things can crumble so quickly. So if you're not focused on yourself, then you can't bring your best version to work. Which means, and you're in such an influential position as a leader, we need the best of you.
Yeah.
Matt, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. You are so knowledgeable and you have gained great wisdom through the experiences that you've been on from childhood, from that poverty of childhood through to where you are today as a leadership coach. I am sure that there are many businesses that are benefiting from working with you. If there are any listening who want to get in touch, how best do they do that?
My website is www.mattmessias.co.uk, and all my contact details are there, and some examples of people I've worked with are on there, although it does need updating actually now I mention it. And so that's the best way to contact me. mattmessias.co.uk. That website gives all my details.
Superb. Thank you, Matt. And hopefully we'll get you back on the podcast in time to come to put to rights all of the issues with the educational system.
Well, I've really enjoyed it. And I hope, Obi, I will see you on a course soon, a golf course, because I know we share a similar passion for that.
For sure, for sure. Take care now.
All the
Bye-bye.
best.